After 30 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit, Thaddeus Coleman finally walks free. But his release isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning. Hidden beneath the surface of his wrongful conviction lies a web of corruption that powerful people will kill to keep buried. As Thaddeus searches for the truth about why he was framed, he uncovers a conspiracy that stretches from the police department to the highest levels of his hometown. With key help from a determined lawyer and his estranged son, Thaddeus must expose the real killer before old secrets claim new victims. What really happened the night Patricia Holloway was murdered, and why was Thaddeus chosen to take the fall? The answers will shock an entire town and reveal a truth more twisted than anyone could imagine. The heavy metal door of Westfield State Penitentiary groaned open, letting in a slice of autumn sunlight that felt alien to Thaddeus Coleman. He stood frozen at the threshold, one foot still in the prison that had been his home for 30 years, the other poised to step into a world he barely recognized. "Mr. Coleman, it's time." The voice belonged to Imani Washington, a lawyer half his age, who had accomplished what dozens before her couldn't, proving his innocence. Thaddeus nodded, his weathered face expressionless. At 58, the once powerful muscles in his arms had withered, and his close-cropped hair had gone completely gray. The plastic bag in his hand contained everything he owned: a dog-eared Bible, a bundle of letters from his long-dead wife, and a watch that no longer kept time. He took that final step, and the door clanged shut behind him. The sound echoed in his ears like it had every day for 3 decades. Only this time, he was on the other side. "Thaddeus, over here! How does it feel to be free?" A crowd of reporters surged forward, microphones thrust toward his face, cameras flashing. Thaddeus flinched, overwhelmed by the noise, the openness, the sheer number of people who weren't guards or inmates. Imani stepped between him and the media. "My client has no comment at this time," she said firmly, guiding him toward a waiting car. Her hand on his elbow was gentle but insistent. The questions continued to fly. "Will you sue the state? What will you do now? Do you hold a grudge against those who put you away?" Thaddeus kept his eyes fixed ahead, his expression never changing. But somewhere behind those eyes, a younger Thaddeus was screaming. "I didn't do it! I swear to God I didn't kill that woman!" The courtroom had gone silent after his outburst. The judge peered down at him over reading glasses, face carved from stone. "Mr. Coleman, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers for the murder of Patricia Holloway. Given the heinous nature of this crime, I hereby sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." The gavel came down like a thunderclap, and Thaddeus felt his legs give way. As the officers moved to take him away, he caught sight of Police Chief Raymond Holloway in the front row. The man's face showed grief, but his eyes held something else entirely. The car door slammed, jolting Thaddeus back to the present. Imani slid in beside him, and the driver, a young man with dreadlocks who worked for the Innocence Project, pulled away from the curb. "You did good back there," Imani said, her voice softening now that they were alone. "I know this must be overwhelming." Thaddeus watched the prison shrink in the rear window, the massive gray structure that had swallowed 30 years of his life growing smaller with each second. His hands trembled slightly in his lap. "The DNA results were conclusive," Imani continued, filling the silence. "The blood under Patricia Holloway's fingernails wasn't yours. It never was. The technology just didn't exist back then to prove it. And the witness who placed you at the scene that night has recanted, admitted he was pressured by the police." Thaddeus turned to look at her. Deep lines etched his face, like a road map of suffering. "Will that bring back my wife?" he asked, his voice rusty from disuse. "Will it give me back the years I missed with my son?" Imani lowered her eyes. "No, nothing can do that. But we're filing for compensation. The state owes you for this miscarriage of justice." "Money?" Thaddeus's laugh held no humor. "What's money to a man who's been buried alive for 30 years? The car wound through unfamiliar streets. So much had changed. Buildings where there had once been fields. Devices in everyone's hands. Clothes, cars, everything different. "Your son Marcus has been notified of your release," Imani said. "He lives in Chicago now, works in computers." Thaddeus nodded, but said nothing. Marcus had been 7 when they took his father away. The last time he'd visited the prison, he'd been 25, angry and distant. That was 12 years ago. "We've arranged temporary housing for you," Imani continued. "And there's a program to help with reintegration, job training, counseling, whatever you need." Thaddeus stared out the window, watching this strange new world rush by. Part of him was still back in that cell, still counting days that led nowhere. "There's something else," Imani said, her voice dropping. She glanced at the driver, then back to Thaddeus. "Something that didn't come out in the hearing." For the first time, Thaddeus saw uncertainty in the young lawyer's eyes. Fear, even. "The DNA under Patricia's fingernails?" "We got a match in the system." She hesitated. "Thaddeus, there's more to this case than a simple wrongful conviction. Much more." Something cold settled in Thaddeus's stomach. "They knew," he whispered, the realization dawning on him with sickening clarity. "All this time, they knew." Imani nodded slowly. "I think so. And if I'm right about what really happened, some very powerful people are going to wish you'd stayed in that prison forever." Outside the car window, free citizens went about their lives, unaware that in their midst a man had just emerged from a tomb. Thaddeus Coleman was legally alive again, but as the weight of Imani's words sank in, he wondered how long that life might last. Millfield, 1992. "Daddy, look!" 7-year-old Marcus Coleman held up a model car, its paint still wet in spots. "I made it just like yours!" Thaddeus wiped his hands on a shop rag and crouched down to his son's level. At 28, he moved with the easy strength of a man who worked with his hands for a living. His smile revealed a small gap between his front teeth that his wife, Darlene, always said gave him character. "That's some fine work, son," he said, examining the toy Chevy that did indeed match his own beat-up but beloved car. "You got a steady hand. Maybe you'll be a mechanic like your old man someday." "Nuh-uh," Marcus shook his head decisively. "I'm gonna be an astronaut, or maybe a computer guy." Thaddeus laughed and ruffled the boy's hair. "You can be anything you want. That's why I'm working so hard, so you can go to college and pick your own path." "Thaddeus?" Darlene appeared in the doorway of Coleman's auto repair, her nurse's scrubs covered by a light jacket. "Your dinner's getting cold, and this boy needs his bath." "Coming, baby." Thaddeus stood, knees cracking. "Just finishing Mrs. Wilson's brake job." "Always one more job," Darlene said, but her tone was affectionate. She was 30, with kind eyes and a face that lit up when she smiled. "That's why you're the only mechanic in Millfield that folks trust." "Not everybody," Thaddeus replied, his smile dimming slightly. Just last week, a white customer had walked in, seen Thaddeus behind the counter, and walked right back out again. "Their loss," Darlene said firmly. Come on now. Food's waiting. Later that night, after Marcus was tucked in bed with his space-themed blankets pulled up to his chin, Thaddeus and Darlene sat on their small porch. The September air carried a hint of the coming fall. Ed Michaels offered to sell me his garage today, Thaddeus said quietly. He's retiring next year. Darlene turned to him, eyes wide. The big place on Main Street? Thaddeus, that's wonderful. It's a lot of money, he cautioned. We'd have to take out a loan, and it's on Main Street, Darlene finished, for him. Where some folks might not like seeing a black man own a business. Thaddeus nodded. But I'm thinking of Marcus, of our future. We've worked too hard to stay small out of fear. Darlene took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. Then, we'll make it work. We always do. The next morning dragged late into evening. Mrs. Wilson's simple brake job had revealed a cracked axle, and then Mr. Peterson brought in his truck with transmission trouble. By the time Thaddeus called Darlene to say he'd be late, it was already past 8. Don't drive too fast coming home, she warned. Sheriff Davis has his deputies out tonight after that fight at Lou's bar. I'll be careful, he promised. Save me some dinner? Always, she said. Love you. Love you more. It was nearly 10 when Thaddeus finally locked up the garage. The Jubilee night was cool and clear, stars visible even through Millfield's modest light pollution. He was bone-tired but satisfied with the day's good work. He was just turning onto Oakwood Drive when he saw her, a woman standing beside a silver Cadillac, the hood up, her posture radiating frustration. Even from a distance, Thaddeus recognized Patricia Holloway, wife of Millfield's police chief, Raymond Holloway. His first instinct was to keep driving. Getting involved with white folks' problems after dark wasn't smart in a town like Millfield, but he was a mechanic, and someone needed help with their car. Professional pride won out over caution. He pulled over, keeping his headlights on so she could clearly see who was approaching. "Car trouble, ma'am," he called, maintaining a respectful distance. Patricia Holloway turned, startled. She was in her 40s, well-dressed, with shoulder-length, blonde hair. Recognition dawned on her face. "Oh, Mr. Coleman, right? From the garage on Pine Street." Thaddeus nodded, surprised she knew his name. "Yes, ma'am. Looks like you've got a problem there." "Flat tire," she said, gesturing helplessly. "I was at the library book club, and when I came out, I tried calling Raymond, but he's working late." "I can change it for you," Thaddeus offered. "Won't take but a few minutes." Relief washed over her face. "Would you? That's very kind." As Thaddeus retrieved the spare from her trunk, Patricia stood back, arms wrapped around herself against the night chill. "You have a son, don't you?" she asked suddenly. "I've seen you, with him at the park." "Yes, ma'am. Marcus. He's 7. He seems like a sweet boy." Her voice had a wistful quality. "Raymond and we never had children." Thaddeus worked in silence for a moment. "Kids are a blessing," he finally said, unsure how else to respond. "Yes, they must be." She watched him work, then added quietly, "Your wife is Darlene, isn't she? The nurse at County General?" Thaddeus looked up, surprised again. "That's right," Patricia nodded, seeming lost in thought. "She's been very helpful to some friends of mine." Something in her tone made Thaddeus pause, but he didn't ask. It wasn't his business. He finished changing the tire and closed the trunk. "All set, Mrs. Holloway." "Thank you." She opened her purse. "Please, let me pay you for your trouble." Thaddeus shook his head. "No need, just being neighborly." "Well, I appreciate it." She hesitated, then added, Your fingerprints will be on my car now." The statement was odd, delivered with an intensity that confused him. Yes, I guess they will," he replied. "I just mean, people should know you helped me." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Have a good night, Mr. Coleman." As he drove away, Thaddeus glanced in his rearview mirror. Patricia Holloway stood watching him go, a solitary figure in the glow of a streetlight, her expression unreadable. The next morning, Thaddeus woke to pounding on his front door. Darlene stirred beside him. "Who's that at this hour?" she murmured. The bedside clock read 5:47 a.m. The pounding came again, more insistent. Thaddeus pulled on a shirt and went to the window. Squad cars lined the street, their lights painting the pre-dawn darkness in flashes of red and blue. "Police! Open up!" Cold dread settled in Thaddeus's stomach. He went downstairs, Darlene following close behind. The moment he unlocked the door, it burst open. 4 officers rushed in, guns drawn. "Thaddeus Coleman, you're under arrest for the EBT murder of Patricia Holloway." The words made no sense. Thaddeus stood frozen as they spun him around, roughly cuffing his hands behind his back. "There's a mistake," he stammered. "I just helped her with a flat tire last night." "You have the right to remain silent," the officer continued mechanically. From upstairs came a small voice. "Daddy?" Marcus stood on the stairs in his space shuttle pajamas, eyes wide with terror. "It's okay, son," Thaddeus called as they began to drag him toward the door. "It's a mistake. Tell them, Darlene. Tell them I came straight home." But Darlene stood speechless, one hand covering her mouth, the other reaching for Marcus as the officers pushed Thaddeus out into the cold morning air, away from everything he loved, everything he'd built, his life crumbling like a house of cards in a sudden, inexplicable wind. The Millfield County Courthouse stood like a mountain of stone against the clear blue October sky. Thaddeus shuffled up the steps in shackles, a deputy gripping each arm. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on his frame. He'd lost 15 pounds in the 6 weeks since his arrest. Reporters called out questions. Onlookers stared. Some shouted ugly words. Thaddeus kept his eyes on the ground. "Remember what I told you," his lawyer whispered. Martin Fisk was young, barely out of law school, with an ill-fitting suit and nervous eyes. The public defender's office had assigned him to the case. "Don't show emotion. Jurors don't like angry black men." As if from a distance, Thaddeus heard himself reply, "Yes, sir." Inside, the courtroom was packed. Thaddeus spotted Darlene in the 3rd row, her face drawn with worry. She'd sold their car to pay for his bail hearing, but Judge Wilson had denied it anyway. "Flight risk," he'd said, though Thaddeus had lived in Millfield his entire life. Marcus wasn't there. They'd agreed a courtroom was no place for a 7-year-old. As Thaddeus took his seat at the defense table, a hush fell over the room. All eyes turned to the side door as Police Chief Raymond Holloway entered. Tall and broad-shouldered in his crisp uniform, his face was a mask of contained grief. But when his gaze landed on Thaddeus, something flashed in his eyes, something cold and calculating. "All rise," the bailiff's voice rang out as Judge Wilson entered. The trial of Thaddeus Coleman for the murder of Patricia Holloway had begun. District Attorney Samuel Graves was a seasoned prosecutor with silver hair and a southern drawl that thickened when he addressed the jury, 12 white faces watching him intently. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "the evidence in this case is simple and damning. On the night of September 23, 1992, the defendant, Thaddeus Coleman, encountered Patricia Holloway alone on a dark road. He helped her with a flat tire, or so he claims, but several hours later, Mrs. Holloway was found brutally beaten to death in her own home. Thaddeus felt sick. He'd thrown up that morning when they showed him the crime scene photos. The Patricia Holloway he'd met, kind, slightly sad, reduced to a broken body on a living room floor. The defendant's fingerprints were found on the victim's car, Graves continued. A partial shoe print matching the defendant's work boots was discovered in the victim's blood, and a witness saw a black man matching the defendant's description leaving the Holloway residence around midnight. Martin Fisk shifted in his seat but didn't object. Thaddeus had already told him the witness description was wrong. He'd been home by 11. But most telling of all, Graves said, his voice dropping. When police searched the defendant's home, they found a watch belonging to Chief Holloway hidden in his garage, a watch that had been inside the Holloway home. Thaddeus jerked his head up. "That's a lie," he whispered fiercely to Fisk. "I never had any watch." Fisk patted his arm. "We'll address it in cross-examination." But Fisk's cross-examinations proved weak. The fingerprint expert admitted Thaddeus's prints were only on the exterior of Patricia's car, consistent with changing a tire. But the damage was done. The shoe print expert couldn't conclusively match the blood-soaked print to Thaddeus's specific boots, only to their brand and size, but Fisk failed to drive home this crucial distinction. The witness, Vernon Myers, was a local handyman with a record of drunk and disorderly conduct. Under Graves's questioning, he confidently identified Thaddeus. "Saw him plain as day under the streetlight," Myers insisted, walking fast away from the Holloway's place. During cross-examination, Fisk asked only a few perfunctory questions about lighting conditions and distance. He didn't mention Myers's history of racial slurs at the local bar, which Thaddeus had told him about. When it was the defense's turn to present, Fisk called Darlene to the stand. "Mrs. Coleman," he asked, "what time did your husband come home on the night of September 23? "Just after 10:30, Darlene replied, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "He called around 8 to say he'd be late. When he got home, we ate dinner together. He showered and went to bed. He never left the house again that night." "And you're certain of the time?" "Yes. My favorite show ended at 10. Thaddeus was home 30 minutes later." On cross-examination, Graves was merciless. "Mrs. Coleman, you love your husband, don't you?" "Yes, of course. And you'd do anything to protect him, wouldn't you?" "I wouldn't lie under oath." "But you would lie to protect your family," Graves pressed, "like when you told the hospital you'd fallen down the stairs in 1989, when neighbors had reported a domestic disturbance at your home." Darlene's face flushed. "That was my ex-boyfriend, before I met Thaddeus. Thaddeus has never laid a hand on me." But the seed of doubt had been planted. Thaddeus could see it in the jurors' faces. Throughout the trial, Raymond Holloway sat in the first row, watching with an expression of contained fury. When he took the stand, he projected the perfect image of a grieving husband. "Patricia was the gentlest soul," he said, voice thick with emotion. "She volunteered at the library, helped with community fundraisers. Everyone loved her." "Chief Holloway," Graves asked, "did your wife mention helping a black man with car trouble that night?" "No, sir. When I spoke to her around 9, she said her book club had just ended and she was heading straight home." "And the watch found in the defendant's garage?" "It was my grandfather's. I kept it in my bedside drawer. Patricia knew how much it meant to me." When Fisk's turn came, he seemed intimidated by the police chief. "Chief Holloway, were you and your wife having marital problems?" Holloway's face hardened. "Absolutely not. No arguments? No discussions of separation?" "Objection!" Graves was on his feet. This line of questioning is irrelevant and intended to smear a victim who can't defend herself. Sustained, Judge Wilson ruled immediately. Move on, Mr. Fisk. Fisk moved on, missing the crucial follow-up about where Holloway himself had been that night. Finally, it was Thaddeus's turn to testify. As rehearsed, he calmly explained helping Patricia with the flat tire and going straight home afterward. "Did you at any point enter the Holloway residence?" Fisk asked. "No, sir. Never." "Did you take a watch from Mrs. Holloway?" "No, sir. I've never seen any watch." But on cross-examination, Graves pounced. "Mr. Coleman, you were alone with Mrs. Holloway on a dark, empty road. No witnesses. Isn't that convenient?" "I was just helping her." "And you expect us to believe that Chief Holloway's watch magically appeared in your garage? I don't know how it got there. It wasn't there when I left for work. Perhaps because you took it from the Holloway home later that night?" "No, sir. I never went to their house. Yet your shoe print was found in Patricia Holloway's blood. It wasn't my print. I wasn't there." Graves smiled thinly. "The jury will decide that, Mr. Coleman." In his closing argument, Graves painted a vivid picture. Thaddeus helping Patricia, learning she was alone, returning later to rob the house, being caught by Patricia, and killing her in a panic. "Don't let this violent man walk free," he urged the jury. Justice for Patricia demands a guilty verdict. Fisk's closing was brief and unconvincing, highlighting the circumstantial nature of the evidence, but failing to offer an alternative theory of the crime. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Thaddeus Coleman, guilty of murder in the first degree." The courtroom erupted in sound. Gasps, a sob from Darlene, reporters rushing out. Thaddeus felt the floor tilt beneath him. This couldn't be happening. Not in America. Not to him. As the bailiffs moved to take him away, he caught Raymond Holloway's eye across the room. In that moment, something passed between them, a look that chilled Thaddeus to his core. For in Holloway's eyes, beyond the public display of grief, there was something that looked unsettlingly like satisfaction. "I sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole," Judge Wilson intoned. The last thing Thaddeus saw as they led him away was Darlene's face, tears streaming down her cheeks as she mouthed 3 words. "I love you." Time in prison moved differently. Days stretched into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. For Thaddeus, the first year was the hardest. Every morning, he woke up thinking he was home, reaching for Darlene beside him. Every morning, reality crashed back when his hands touched cold concrete instead. Westfield State Penitentiary was a fortress of gray stone and steel bars, built in the 1950s and largely unchanged since. Thaddeus's cell was 6 by 8 feet, with a metal toilet, a small sink, and a thin mattress on a steel frame. The only personal touch allowed was a small bulletin board where he pinned photos of Darlene and Marcus. His first cellmate was a bank robber named Willis, who kept to himself. His second was a young drug dealer who cried at night. His third tried to stab him with a sharpened toothbrush over a misunderstanding about a food tray. After that, Thaddeus requested a single cell. The warden granted it. Thaddeus had become a model prisoner. Every Saturday at 2 p.m., Darlene and Marcus visited. They sat across from him at a scratched metal table, guards watching their every move. At first, Marcus would talk excitedly about school, his friends, the model cars he was building. Darlene would squeeze Thaddeus's hand when the guards weren't looking and whisper, "We're still fighting. The appeal is moving forward." But as months turned into years, the visits changed. Marcus grew quieter, his eyes often downcast. He was 9, then 12, then 15, growing up without his father. Darlene grew thinner, deep lines forming around her eyes. She took extra shifts at the hospital to pay for the appeals, the lawyers who kept promising results, but delivering nothing. "I don't understand," she said during one visit in 1996. The shoeprint expert recanted his testimony. He said the prosecution pressured him. "Why isn't that enough?" "The system doesn't like to admit mistakes," Thaddeus replied quietly. 4 years had taught him patience and a deep, sad wisdom. In 1999, Marcus stopped coming. At 14, he was angry. At the system, at his mother for still believing, maybe even at Thaddeus for not being there. "Give him time," Darlene said, though her eyes betrayed her worry. "He's a teenager. It's hard for him." Thaddeus nodded, swallowing his pain. "Tell him I understand. Tell him I love him no matter what." In the monotony of prison life, Thaddeus found small ways to survive. He worked in the prison woodshop, discovering a talent for creating delicate wooden figures. He read every book in the prison library, first for escape, then for knowledge. History, law, philosophy. He devoured them all. Some nights, he'd close his eyes and walk through his old garage in his mind, remembering the feel of tools in his hands, the satisfaction of fixing something broken. Other inmates learned to respect him. He never joined a gang, never participated in the prison economy of contraband and favors. But he would listen when others needed to talk, would share what little he had when someone was in need. Even some guards came to treat him differently, not as a friend, but as a man worthy of basic dignity. The worst day came in 2007. Thaddeus was in the middle of his shift at the woodshop when a guard appeared. "Coleman, warden wants to see you." The warden, a stern woman named Harriet Parker, was not known for calling inmates to her office without reason. When Thaddeus entered, she motioned for the guard to wait outside. "Sit down, Coleman," she said, her voice gentler than he'd ever heard it. "I prefer to stand, ma'am. Please, sit." Something in her tone made him obey. "There's no easy way to say this," she began. "Your wife, Darlene Coleman, passed away yesterday. Cancer. I'm told it was quick." The world stopped. Thaddeus couldn't feel his hands, his feet, couldn't breathe. "She left this for you." Parker slid an envelope across the desk. "I'm sorry for your loss. You can stay here as long as you need." Alone in the warden's office, Thaddeus opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter in Darlene's careful handwriting. "My dearest Thaddeus, if you're reading this, then I've gone ahead of you. I'm sorry. I tried to stay strong, but some battles can't be won. I want you to know that in all these years, I never once doubted you. Not for a second. I've left instructions with my sister for your appeals to continue. Don't give up hope. The truth will come out someday. Tell Marcus that my last wish is for him to visit you. He's a man now, stubborn like his father, but he needs you, even if he doesn't know it yet. I have loved you every day since we met. Prison walls couldn't change that. Death won't either. Until we meet again." Your Darlene Thaddeus read the letter 7 times before folding it carefully and placing it in his pocket. He didn't cry. Not then. The tears would come later, alone in his cell, where no one could witness his grief. Marcus came to the funeral, the warden informed him, but he didn't visit afterward. The monthly visits stopped entirely. Thaddeus added Darlene's obituary, too, his bulletin board, next to the fading photos of happier times. The years blurred together after that. 2008, 2010, 2013, 3 more appeals, all denied. Thaddeus's hair began to gray. Reading grew harder as his eyesight weakened. The younger inmates called him old school, or sometimes deacon, for his quiet dignity and wisdom. In 2016, Warden Parker retired. Her replacement, a former military man named Gregory Hines, brought a harsher regime. Privileges were cut back. The wood shop closed. Guards who had shown Thaddeus small kindnesses were transferred to other parts of the prison. "It's like they're trying to break me all over again," Thaddeus told his new cellmate, an older man named Santiago, serving 20 years for armed robbery. "Maybe they know something you don't," Santiago replied. "Maybe something's changing." Thaddeus shook his head. "Nothing changes in here." But in 2019, something did change. A letter arrived, written on crisp letterhead. The Innocence Project. "Dear Mr. Coleman, my name is Imani Washington, and I'm a lawyer with the Innocence Project. We review cases where we believe a miscarriage of justice may have occurred. A former police officer from Millfield recently contacted us with concerns about your conviction. If you're willing, I'd like to meet with you to discuss the possibility of reopening your case. Advances in DNA testing might provide evidence that wasn't available during your original trial. Sometimes justice is late, but that doesn't mean it's absent. Sincerely, Imani Washington." Escanat Thaddeus read the letter twice, then set it down on his bunk. 27 years had taught him not to hope too quickly, not to believe too easily. Lawyers had made promises before. Evidence had looked promising before. Nothing had changed. But as he stared at the final line, sometimes justice is late, but that doesn't mean it's absent. Something stirred in his chest, not quite hope. Something smaller, more cautious. A tiny flame that had somehow survived nearly 3 decades of darkness. 2 weeks later, when Imani Washington sat across from him in the prison visitation room, young, determined, with clear eyes that didn't flinch from his, Thaddeus allowed himself, for the first time in years, to think about a future beyond prison walls. "This place," Thaddeus said, looking around the halfway house, "it's too big." Imani smiled gently. "It's not that big, Mr. Coleman, just a standard apartment building." But to Thaddeus, who had lived in a 6x8 cell for 30 years, the modest room felt vast and overwhelming. High ceilings, windows without bars, a door he could open and close himself. Too much space, too much freedom. "I can get you something smaller if it would help," Imani offered. Thaddeus shook his head. "No, I need to get used to it, to all of this." It had been 3 weeks since his release, 3 weeks of sensory overload. Cars were sleeker, faster. Phones were small computers people carried everywhere. Buildings where he remembered empty lots. Empty lots where he remembered buildings. And the people? No one made eye contact anymore. All of them staring down at screens in their hands. "Have you tried calling your son?" Imani asked, setting down a bag of groceries she'd brought. Left a message. Thaddeus stood awkwardly in the center of the room, unsure where to sit in his own apartment. His wife called back. Said he's thinking about it. Imani nodded, understanding the weight of those words. 30 years was a long time. Marcus was now 37, older than Thaddeus had been when he went to prison. "The DNA results confirmed what we knew," Imani said, changing the subject. "The blood under Patricia Holloway's fingernails wasn't yours. It matched an unknown male. I've filed the compensation claim with the state. It won't make up for what happened. But it's something. Money." Thaddeus's voice was flat. "What will I do with money?" "Whatever you want," Imani replied simply. That's what freedom means. Freedom. The word still felt strange to him. "The press wants interviews," Imani continued. "Your story is gaining traction. People are angry about what happened to you." "Let them be angry. I'm tired of anger." Later, alone in the apartment, Thaddeus stood by the window watching people pass by on the street below. So many colors after years of prison gray. So much movement. He'd learned in prison that stillness was safety. Now he had to relearn how to move through the world. The compensation meeting was scheduled for the following week. Thaddeus wore a suit Imani had helped him buy. His first new clothes in 3 decades. The fabric felt strange against his skin, the tie too tight around his neck. "Just tell your story," Imani advised as they waited in the conference room. "These are administrative judges. They've seen the evidence. This is just a formality." When the judges entered, 2 men and a woman, in business attire. Thaddeus stood out of habit, like he had for every authority figure in prison. "Please sit, Mr. Coleman," the female judge said kindly. "We know this must be difficult for you." For an hour, they asked questions about his life before prison, his training as a mechanic, his potential earnings over 30 years. Thaddeus answered. Mechanically, the details of his lost life laid out like items in a catalog. "One final question," the lead judge said. "Do you harbor resentment toward the state for your wrongful conviction?" Imani tensed beside him, but Thaddeus took his time answering. "I resented the walls, the bars, the guards who treated me like an animal," he said finally. "I resented missing my son's childhood and my wife's final days. But mostly, I resented the waste of it all. 30 years of my life thrown away for nothing." In the silence that followed, Thaddeus thought he saw tears in the female judge's eyes. 3 days later, Imani called with the news. They've approved $2.5 million in compensation, maximum amount under the law. Thaddeus thanked her quietly and hung up. Money couldn't buy back time. That evening, his phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello?" He still found it strange to talk into the small rectangle of glass and metal. A long pause. Then, "Dad?" Thaddeus's knees went weak. He sank onto the couch. "Marcus? Yeah, it's me." His son's voice was deeper than Thaddeus remembered, with a slight Chicago accent. "I got your message. I thought it was time we talked." They met at a coffee shop halfway between Chicago and Millfield. Thaddeus arrived an hour early, too nervous to sit still in his apartment. He recognized his son immediately. Taller than himself now, but with Darlene's eyes and his own strong jawline. Marcus spotted him and paused, uncertainty crossing his face. Then he walked over, extended his hand formally, and quickly pulled it back, replacing the gesture with an awkward hug. "You look good," Marcus said as they sat. "Better than I expected." "You look like your mother," Thaddeus replied, drinking, in the sight of his son. They talked hesitantly at first, navigating the vast gulf of years between them. Marcus was an IT specialist for a healthcare company. He had a wife, Jasmine, and 2 daughters, Darlene, age 6, and Zoe, age 4. "I have grandchildren," Thaddeus said wonderingly. "They know about you," Marcus said. "We kept a photo of you in our home. Jasmine thought it was important. I'd like to meet them someday, if that's okay." Marcus nodded, twisting his coffee cup. "I should have visited more. After Mom died, you were angry. You had every right to be." "Not at you." Marcus looked up, his eyes suddenly fierce. "I believed you were innocent. I always did. But I was angry at a world that took both my parents away. It was easier to stay away than to keep sitting in that visitation room, watching you grow older behind glass. Something broke open in Thaddeus's chest, a knot of pain he'd carried for years beginning to unravel. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice thick. "The man you've become." Marcus blinked rapidly. "Mom never gave up on getting you out. She made me promise to keep fighting after she was gone. I didn't do enough. You're here now. That's what matters." Meanwhile, Imani was digging deeper into the case. She'd been unusually intense during their recent meetings, often checking her phone or glancing over her shoulder in public places. "There's more going on here than a wrongful conviction," she told Thaddeus one evening in his apartment. "The DNA under Patricia's fingernails, I've been trying to run it through databases to find a match. Any luck?" "Not yet. But I've been talking to people in Millfield. Former cops, courthouse employees. Most won't say anything, but there's clearly still fear there, like they're worried about something. It was 30 years ago, Ms. Washington. People have moved on." "Have they?" Imani leaned forward. "Chief Holloway retired 15 years ago, but he's still a power player in town. County Commissioner, Chamber of Commerce President. His friends are judges, business owners, politicians." Thaddeus felt a familiar coldness in his stomach. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't think your conviction was just a mistake. I think—" Her phone buzzed. Imani checked it, then stood abruptly. "I have to go. An old cop from Millfield has finally agreed to talk. Terrence Walsh. He was a rookie when you were arrested." "Be careful," Thaddeus said, surprising himself with, "The protective instinct." "Always am." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The next day, Imani picked Thaddeus up without calling first, her face tight with tension. "What's wrong?" he asked as they drove. "Walsh is spooked. He'll only meet in public, and only if you're there too. Says he wants to look you in the eye when he tells you what he knows." They met Walsh at a diner 30 miles outside of Millfield, a thin, gray-haired man with constantly moving eyes. He flinched when Thaddeus slid into the booth across from him. "I wasn't sure I'd come," Walsh said, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. "Still not sure I should have." "Whatever you know," Imani said quietly, "Mr. Coleman deserves to hear it." Walsh looked at Thaddeus, guilt written across his face. "I was just a rookie, 22 years old. I didn't understand what was happening until it was too late." "What was happening?" Thaddeus asked. Walsh leaned closer, voice dropping. "It wasn't just a frame job. It was a cover-up, and it goes deeper than you think." He glanced toward the window and suddenly stiffened. "I have to go. We're being watched." Before Imani could stop him, Walsh was hurrying toward the exit. Thaddeus caught a glimpse of a sedan in the parking lot, but couldn't see who was inside. The next morning, Imani called, her voice shaking. "Walsh is dead. Found in his apartment an hour ago. They're calling it a suicide." Thaddeus closed his eyes, the walls of his apartment suddenly feeling as confining as his old cell. "After 30 years, he said, they're still willing to kill, to keep their secrets." "What do you want to do?" Imani asked. For the first time since his release, Thaddeus felt something beyond the numbness that had become his constant companion. A fire long dampened, now rekindling. "I want to go back to Millfield," he said. "I want to look them in the eyes. I want the truth." Millfield looked smaller than Thaddeus remembered. Main Street, once bustling with shops and restaurants, was now dotted with empty storefronts, their windows covered with sun-faded for-lease signs. The old movie theater was now a dollar store. The diner where he and Darlene used to have Sunday breakfast was boarded up. As Imani drove slowly down the street, Thaddeus felt eyes on them from behind curtains and store windows. News of his exoneration had reached Millfield weeks ago. His return was clearly not going unnoticed. "You okay?" Imani asked, glancing at him. Thaddeus nodded, his face expressionless. "Just ghosts." They parked outside the Millfield Inn, a two-story building with peeling white paint. The young woman at the front desk stared openly as they checked in. "You're him, aren't you?" she blurted out. "The man they let out of prison." "Yes," Thaddeus replied simply. She flushed, embarrassed by her outburst. "My granddaddy always said you didn't do it. He was one of the few." "What was his name?" Thaddeus asked, surprised. "Earl Jenkins. He worked at the auto parts store." Thaddeus smiled for the first time since arriving. "I remember Earl. Good man. He passed 5 years back, but he'd be happy to know he was right about you." In his room, Thaddeus stood at the window, looking out at the town that had once been his home. So little remained of the place he knew. His old garage was now a vape shop. The park where he'd pushed Marcus on the swings had been paved over for a parking lot. "What's the plan?" Imani asked, leaning against the doorframe. "First, I want to see Luella Jenkins. She lived next door to us back then. If she's still alive, she'll be in her 80s now." Luella's house on Maple Street looked much the same as Thaddeus remembered. A small white bungalow with blue shutters and roses along the front walk. Only the roses were plastic now. An older woman answered his knock, her brown face deeply lined, her back bent with age. She squinted up at him through thick glasses, then gasped, "Lord have mercy. Thaddeus Coleman." "Hello, Miss Luella." She reached for him with trembling hands. "They said on the TV you got out, but I hardly believed it. Come in, child. Come in." Inside, the house smelled of potpourri and coffee. Photos covered every surface. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Among them, Thaddeus spotted a faded picture of his younger self with Darlene and baby Marcus. "You kept it," he said, picking up the frame. "Course I did." Luella settled into a worn recliner. "Some folks wanted to forget you ever existed. Wanted me to believe you killed that poor woman. But I knew better. 30 years didn't change that." "It's easy, see. Means a lot to hear you say that." Luella studied him with wise eyes. "You didn't come back just to visit an old lady. What are you looking for, Thaddeus?" "The truth. About why they put me away." She nodded slowly. "I figured as much. After Darlene passed, God rest her soul, I kept some of her things. Couldn't bear to throw them out. They're in the attic. You might want to see them." Luella's granddaughter helped bring down a cardboard box labeled Darlene C. Inside were photo albums, Marcuse's baby clothes, and a stack of notebooks bound with a faded ribbon. "Her diaries," Luella explained. "She kept writing in them even after, well, after everything. Said it helped her make sense of things." Thaddeus ran his fingers over the covers, recognizing Darlene's neat handwriting on the dates. "May I take these? They're yours now. Always were." That night, in his hotel room, Thaddeus began reading. The earliest diary started just after their wedding. Happy entries about their new home, the garage business growing, Marcus's birth. Then came September 1992, September 10th. Met with Patricia H. again today. The support group is helping her. She's finally talking about leaving him. Says she has evidence of what he's been doing. Scared for her, though. Men like Raymond don't let go easily. Thaddeus felt a chill. He read further. September 18th. Patricia came to the hospital with bruises she said were from a fall. Nobody falls and gets finger marks on their throat. She's gathering documents, Says she'll be ready to leave next week. Asked if she could stay. With us, if needed. I said yes. Didn't tell Thaddeus yet. Don't want to worry him. September 22nd, Patricia called. Says Raymond found out something's up. She's moved some papers to a safe place. Sounded terrified. Meeting her tomorrow after my shift. The next entry was dated September 24th, the day after Patricia's murder, the day of Thaddeus's arrest. They took him away this morning. Police everywhere. Saying Thaddeus killed Patricia. It's not true. She was going to leave Raymond. She had proof of something. This is all wrong. They won't listen. Raymond was there when they arrested Thaddeus. Smiling. Smiling. Dear God, help us. Thaddeus read until dawn, the picture growing clearer with each page. Patricia Holloway had been running a support group for abused women. Darlene, as a nurse, had been helping. Patricia had confided in Darlene about Raymond's abuse, about evidence she'd gathered of his corruption. And then, the night after Thaddeus helped her with the flat tire, she was murdered. It was never about me, Thaddeus told Imani the next morning, showing her the diaries. It was about Patricia. She was going to expose him. Imani read quickly, her expression grim. This changes everything. If Patricia had evidence of corruption, then her murder and my conviction weren't just about covering up domestic abuse. Raymond killed her to keep her quiet about something bigger. We need to find that evidence, Imani said, if it still exists after all this time. Their search took them to the county records office, where a nervous clerk informed them that files from that period had been lost in a storage flood. The courthouse was equally unhelpful. Evidence from Thaddeus's trial had been routinely destroyed after 20 years, they claimed. They've covered their tracks well, Imani said as they left, frustration evident in her voice. Maybe not well enough, Thaddeus replied. Darlene's diary mentioned Patricia's autopsy. The medical examiner might have records. Dr. Samuel Oakes had performed Patricia Holloway's autopsy in 1992. According to online records, he died in a car accident just months after Thaddeus's trial. Another convenient death, Imani muttered as they drove to the county medical examiner's office. The current examiner, Dr. Vihan Patel, was a young man with a precise manner. He listened to their request with professional detachment. Dr. Oakes's files would be in deep storage, if they exist at all, he said. I can request them, but it will take time. We don't have time, Imani pressed. A man lost 30 years of his life because of a frame-up. Another man just died trying to tell the truth. Dr. Patel glanced at Thaddeus, a flash of sympathy crossing his face. Give me a day. No promises. As they turned to leave, a middle-aged woman stepped into the doorway. She wore scrubs and a badge identifying her as M. Rodriguez, forensic tech. I couldn't help overhearing, she said quietly. I knew Dr. Oakes. I was his lab assistant back then, just starting out. Thaddeus felt a surge of hope. Do you remember Patricia Holloway's case? The woman nodded, looking nervously down the hall. Break room, 5 minutes. In the empty break room, Maria Rodriguez spoke in hushed tones. Dr. Oakes was troubled by that case. The evidence didn't match the prosecution's theory. The wounds on Mrs. Holloway's body, they were consistent with someone taller than you, Mr. Coleman. And there was DNA under her fingernails that didn't match samples from the scene. Did he document this? Imani asked. In his official report, yes, but the version used in court was different. They altered it, Thaddeus said, the familiar cold feeling returning. Dr. Oakes tried to speak up. Then came the threats. His car's brakes failed on Mountain Road. She swallowed hard. It wasn't an accident. As they left the medical examiner's office, Thaddeus spotted a familiar figure across the parking lot, an elderly black woman leaning heavily on a cane. It took him a moment to place her. "Mrs. Wilson," he called out. "Gladys Wilson." The woman turned, her eyes widening in recognition. She had been one of his garage customers, the last person whose car he'd worked on before his arrest. "Thaddeus Coleman," she said, her voice wavering. "The Lord works in mysterious ways." "It's good to see you, ma'am. I never believed what they said about you," Mrs. Wilson said firmly. "Neither did a lot of folks, but Millfield has ways of keeping people quiet." As they helped her to her car, Mrs. Wilson mentioned that she still lived in the same house, 2 doors down from where the Holloways had lived. "That house stood empty for years after what happened," she said. "Nobody wanted to live there. Then, about 5 years ago, they tore it down, built a new one. The Prestons live there now. He's the police chief." "Zachary Preston?" Imani asked. "The current chief?" Mrs. Wilson nodded. "Raymond Holloway's protege. Hand-picked him as his replacement when he retired." Back at the hotel, Thaddeus emptied the rest of Luella's box. Beneath a layer of Marcus's baby clothes, he found another small box. This one metal, locked, with Darlene's name taped to the top. "Ah, hiders, never mentioned this," he said, turning it over in his hands. The lock was simple. Imani found a paper clip and had it open in minutes. Inside was a sealed envelope addressed to Thaddeus in Darlene's handwriting, dated 2007, the year she died. With trembling fingers, Thaddeus opened it. Inside was a key and a note. "Thaddeus, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've somehow found your way back to Millfield. This key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank, box Barrier 7113. Patricia gave it to me the day before she died. She said if anything happened to her, the contents would explain everything. I never told anyone about this. I was too afraid. Forgive me for keeping this secret, but I had to protect Marcus. Now it's time for the truth. All my love, Darlene Thaddeus." And Imani stared at the key in stunned silence. After all these years, Patricia Holloway's evidence might still exist. "The bank opens at 9 tomorrow," Imani said finally. "If it's still there," Thaddeus replied, hope and fear battling within him. "If they haven't found it already." That night, as Thaddeus lay awake in his hotel room, he felt the weight of Millfield pressing down on him. This town had taken everything from him: his freedom, his wife, his years with his son. Now he was back, unearthing its secrets one by one. Tomorrow, he might finally learn why. The First National Bank of Millfield stood at the corner of Main and Elm, a sturdy brick building that had weathered decades of economic ups and downs. Thaddeus and Imani arrived at exactly 9 o'clock, Darlene's key clutched tightly in Thaddeus's hand. The bank manager, a nervous young man named Kevin Finch, grew visibly uncomfortable when they requested access to box 713. "That's a very old account," he said, checking his computer. "I'm not sure if it's still active." "The box belongs to Patricia Holloway," Imani explained. "My client has the key and legal authorization to access it." Finch's eyes widened at the name. "I'll need to verify this with our legal department." "Of course." Imani placed her business card on the desk. "We'll wait." 30 minutes later, Finch returned with an older woman who introduced herself as the bank's head of security. After examining Darlene's letter and the key, she reluctantly led them to the vault. Box Darber 713 Hasn't been accessed in over 25 years, she explained, unlocking the outer door. There's a maintenance fee associated with dormant accounts, but it appears someone has been paying it anonymously all this time. Thaddeus exchanged a look with Imani. Darlene had kept the box active, even after her death. She must have made arrangements. The metal box slid out from the wall with a soft scrape. The security head left them alone in the private viewing room, where Thaddeus slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a sealed manila envelope and a small cassette tape labeled only with the date, September 22, 1992, the day before Patricia's murder. "A tape recorder," Thaddeus murmured. "Patricia was recording something." "We need to find a tape player," Imani said. "They're not exactly common anymore." "Luella might have one. She keeps everything." But before they could leave, the viewing room door opened. Police Chief Zachary Preston stood there, his uniform crisp, his expression severe. "Mr. Coleman, Ms. Washington, I believe you have something that belongs to the Millfield Police Department." Imani rose to her feet. "This is a private bank transaction, Chief Preston. You have no authority here." "I do when it involves evidence, in an ongoing investigation." Preston stepped into the room, hand resting on his belt near his holster. "The contents of that box may pertain to the death of Officer Walsh." "Terrence Walsh's death was ruled a suicide," Imani countered. "We've reopened the case." Preston's eyes never left the items on the table. "Those materials may be relevant." Thaddeus studied the younger man's face. Preston was in his 40s, clean-cut, with the confident bearing of someone used to being obeyed. But there was something else there. Tension around his eyes, a slight twitch in his jaw. "You're afraid," Thaddeus said suddenly. "What are you afraid we'll find, Chief Preston?" Something flickered in Preston's eyes. Doubt, perhaps. "I'm doing my job, Mr. Coleman. Nothing more." "Your job?" Thaddeus stood, drawing himself to his full height. Like framing an innocent man was Raymond Holloway's job, Preston flinched at the name. "You don't understand what you're getting into." "Then explain it to me," Thaddeus challenged. 30 years of my life were stolen. I deserve to know why." For a long moment, Preston was silent, conflict playing across his face. Finally, he reached for his radio. "Cancel the backup," he said. "False alarm." He closed the door and lowered his voice. "Not here. My office. 1 hour." After securing the evidence in Imani's briefcase, they drove to Luella's house to borrow her cassette player. As Thaddeus had predicted, she had one tucked away in a closet, along with boxes of old tapes. "Technology changes, but I don't," she chuckled. "What's on the tape?" "We're about to find out," Thaddeus said, carefully inserting the cassette. The tape hissed with static. Then a woman's voice emerged, fearful but determined. "This is Patricia Holloway. If something happens to me, this recording explains why. Raymond knows I'm planning to leave. He's threatened me before, but tonight was different. He said nobody leaves him, especially not with what I know." There was a rustling sound, then. "I've gathered evidence of Raymond's involvement in drug trafficking through the department. Confiscated drugs being resold, money laundering through local businesses, officers on the payroll. It's all documented in the files I've secured elsewhere." A door slammed in the background of the recording. Patricia's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's home. God help me." More rustling. Then Raymond Holloway's voice, slurred with alcohol. "Who were you talking to?" "Nobody. Just myself." "Liar. You've been sneaking around." Think I don't know about your little meetings with that nurse? Think I don't know you're planning to leave? Raymond, please! A crash, followed by Patricia's cry of pain. You think you can threaten me? Me? I own this town. I'm not threatening you. Patricia's voice was shaking now. I just want out. Nobody leaves me. Nobody. Especially not with what you think you know. I don't. Shut up. You think you can take those files to the state police? You'll never make it out of Millfield alive. The recording ended with the sound of another crash. Thaddeus sat stone-faced, while Imani and Luella exchanged horrified glances. She knew, Thaddeus said quietly. She knew he was going to kill her. And she left evidence, Imani added, opening the manila envelope. Inside were photographs of Raymond Holloway meeting with known drug dealers, photocopies of falsified evidence logs, and bank statements showing unexplained deposits to several officers' accounts. Most damning of all was a list of protected businesses, local establishments used for money laundering with the percentage of profits that went back to the department. This is bigger than just Holloway, Imani said, scanning the documents. This implicates half the department from back then. And some who are still serving, Thaddeus noted, pointing to a name on the list, Officer Z. Preston, with deposits totaling over $50,000 between 1990 and 1992. An hour later, they sat in Chief Preston's office. The evidence spread between them. Preston's face had lost its color as he examined Patricia's documentation. I was 22, he said, finally. A rookie. Holloway recruited me right out of the academy, said I had potential. By the time I realized what was happening, I was already implicated. You took the money, Thaddeus stated flatly. Preston nodded, shame evident in his slumped shoulders. At first. Later, I tried to distance myself to clean up the department. But Raymond's network runs deep. The drug trade moved on to new people, but the corruption remained. Did you know? Thaddeus leaned forward, his voice low with controlled anger. Did you know I was innocent? Preston couldn't meet his eyes. Not at first. I believed what everyone said, that you killed her in a robbery gone wrong. It wasn't until years later, when I found inconsistencies in the case file, that I started to suspect. By then, Raymond was retired but still powerful. County commissioner, friends in high places. And Walsh? Did you know he was going to talk to us? Preston's jaw tightened. I warned him not to. Told him it would only end badly. I didn't think they'd actually... He broke off. I didn't order it, if that's what you're asking. But you know who did, Imani pressed. After a long pause, Preston nodded. Raymond still has people loyal to him, officers who owe their careers to him. One in particular, James Mercer, my deputy chief. He's Raymond's eyes and ears in the department. Thaddeus absorbed this, connecting the pieces. So, when Walsh reached out to us, Mercer reported it to Raymond, who gave the order. Same playbook as 30 years ago. Suddenly, Marcus's voice echoed in Thaddeus's memory. I believed you were innocent. I always did. An idea formed. My son works in IT now, Thaddeus said. Could he find evidence in old communications, emails, phone records? Preston considered this. Maybe. The department switched to digital records in 2003. There might be something in the archives. That evening, Thaddeus called Marcus. After explaining their discoveries, he asked the question, Can you help us, son? We need someone who understands computer systems. There was a pause on the line. I'll be there tomorrow, Marcus replied. I still have friends in the IT department at Millfield General from my summer job in college. They might help us access hospital records, too. See if there's anything from Mom or Mrs. Holloway. When Marcus arrived the next day, the resemblance to the angry young man who had stopped visiting prison was still there, but tempered now with purpose. He hugged his father briefly, then set up his laptop in Thaddeus's hotel room. The hospital. Records were easy, he explained as he worked. My friend Jamie still has admin access. Patricia Holloway had 3 ER visits in the year before her death, all with injuries consistent with domestic violence. And the police department? Imani asked. Trickier, but not impossible. Their network security is outdated. His fingers flew over the keyboard. I can access their email server remotely. The question is what to look for. Anything connecting Mercer to Raymond Holloway, Thaddeus suggested. Or about Walsh's death. Hours later, Marcus sat back, his expression grim. Got them. Emails between Mercer and Raymond discussing Walsh becoming a problem. Raymond telling Mercer to handle it like we did with Rodriguez back in '93. The forensic tech who testified against Holloway's version of events, Imani said. She told us Oakes's death wasn't an accident. And there's more, Marcus continued. A former crime scene tech named Linda Martinez has been emailing Preston for years about evidence tampering in your case, Dad. Her emails claim she was pressured to plant that watch in your garage. Preston had avoided their calls since their meeting. When they finally cornered him at the station, he looked like a man under siege. Martinez is retired in Florida, he admitted. She's been asking me to reopen your case for years. I kept putting her off, afraid of what would happen if I did. We need her testimony, Imani insisted. And yours. Preston ran a hand over his face. You don't understand. Raymond still has power here. People still fear him. I spent 30 years in prison for a crime he committed. Thaddeus said quietly. I'm not afraid of him anymore. Something in Thaddeus's steady gaze seemed to strengthen Preston's resolve. I'll help you, he said finally. God help me, but I'll help you. Raymond Holloway's home sat on 3 acres at the edge of Millfield, a sprawling colonial with white columns and manicured gardens. Even in retirement, he had maintained the trappings of power. The finest house in town, membership in the country club, a seat on every important board and committee. At 75, his hair had gone silver, but he still carried himself with the authority of a man used to being obeyed. When his housekeeper announced visitors, he was in his study, reviewing proposals for a new shopping center development. His latest business venture. Chief Preston, Raymond said, rising from behind his mahogany desk. His smile faltered when he saw who accompanied Preston. What is the meaning of this? Hello, Raymond, Thaddeus said quietly. It's been a long time. Raymond's face hardened, but he quickly composed himself. Mr. Coleman, I heard about your release. Unfortunate. Mistake by the justice system? Not a mistake, Imani corrected. A deliberate frame-up. One that you orchestrated. Raymond laughed, the sound hollow. I see prison has filled your head with conspiracy theories, Coleman. I understand your bitterness, but to come to my home with these wild accusations... We found Patricia's safety deposit box, Thaddeus interrupted. We heard the tape, Raymond. The color drained from Raymond's face. For a moment, genuine fear flashed in his eyes before his arrogance reasserted itself. I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus stepped forward, laptop in hand. We also have copies of emails between you and Deputy Chief Mercer discussing Terrence Walsh, about how he needed to be handled. Raymond's gaze darted between them, calculating. Zach, you're the chief of police. Are you really allowing this harassment of a respected community leader? On what grounds? On the grounds of murder, conspiracy, evidence tampering, and 30 years of corruption, Preston replied, his voice steady. It's over, Raymond. Raymond's laugh was colder now. Over? Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I built this town. Half the judges in this county owe me their positions. The DA plays golf at my club every Sunday. Maybe, Imani acknowledged. But the federal prosecutor I called this morning doesn't. Neither does the FBI agent who's reviewing Patricia's evidence of your drug operation right now. For the first time, uncertainty crept into Raymond's expression. He moved behind his desk, as if seeking the protection of its solid bulk. This is absurd. You have no proof that would stand up in court? After 30 years? Please. Linda Martinez is flying in from Florida tomorrow, Preston said. She's prepared to testify that you ordered her to plant evidence in Thaddeus's case. That drunk? No one will believe her. They'll believe the DNA under Patricia's fingernails, Thaddeus said quietly. It wasn't mine, but I'm betting it was yours. Raymond's hand moved toward his desk drawer. Preston tensed, one hand shifting to his holster. Don't, he warned. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then Raymond pulled his hand back, a tight smile spreading across his face. Fine. Let's say, hypothetically, there was some impropriety in the investigation. The statute of limitations has long expired on any procedural mistakes. Not on murder, Imani countered. There's no statute of limitations on murder. You can't prove I killed Patricia, even with your supposed evidence. Thaddeus took a step closer to the desk. Why, Raymond? Why me? Of all the people you could have framed, why did you choose me? Something shifted in Raymond's eyes, a flash of the true man behind the polished exterior. You think it was random? He laughed, the sound devoid of humor. You really don't remember, do you? Remember what? 2 months before Patricia died, you worked on her car. Afterward, you told her something was wrong with the brakes, that they looked like they'd been tampered with. The memory surfaced slowly in Thaddeus's mind. Patricia bringing her car in for routine maintenance, his discovery that someone had partially cut the brake line, his concerned warning to her. You planted the seed of doubt in her mind, Raymond continued, bitterness seeping into his voice. She started watching me, questioning me, started keeping records. You made her suspicious. You were trying to kill her even then, Thaddeus realized. Make it look like an accident. I was trying to save my marriage, Raymond snapped. She was threatening to leave, to expose things she didn't understand. So when that failed, you killed her outright and framed me. You were the perfect solution to both my problems. Raymond's facade was crumbling now. Decades of carefully maintained lies giving way to ugly truth. A black mechanic with access to her car. Who would question it? And you'd already caused enough trouble. 2 birds, 1 stone. The casual cruelty of it, the deliberate destruction of Thaddeus's life as an afterthought, struck everyone in the room silent. Finally, Preston spoke. Raymond Holloway, you're under arrest for the murder of Patricia Holloway and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Raymond's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little! I made you! I can destroy you just as easily. Not anymore, Preston said, producing handcuffs. This isn't over, Raymond snarled as Preston secured his wrists. You have no idea what I'm capable of, the connections I have. Actually, Marcus said, turning his laptop screen toward Raymond, we do. On the screen was a live video feed. Everything in the room had been broadcasting to the FBI field office in the state capitol. Outside, sirens approached. Raymond's shoulders slumped as the fight suddenly left him. For the first time, Thaddeus saw him for what he truly was, not the powerful police chief or respected businessman, but a cornered, frightened old man whose web of lies had finally unraveled. As agents took Raymond away, Thaddeus remained in the study, looking at the evidence of the life Raymond had built on corruption and murder. The photos with politicians, the civic awards, the comfortable wealth. All while Thaddeus had languished in a cell, his own life stolen from him. "Are you okay?" Imani asked quietly. "I don't know what I am," Thaddeus admitted. 30 years, and it all came down to being in the wrong place, at the wrong time. For noticing a cut-break line. In the days that followed, the full extent of Raymond's crimes came to light. The drug trafficking operation had continued for decades, evolving but never truly ending. 4 unsolved murders were linked to Raymond's network. Dozens of officers, past and present, were implicated. Judges, lawyers, business owners, the corruption had seeped into every corner of Millfield. A week later, as Thaddeus packed to leave town, Preston arrived at his hotel room. "There's something you should know," he said. "It wasn't just the drug operation Patricia discovered. There was more." "What do you mean?" "Raymond and his crew weren't just selling confiscated drugs. They were setting up innocent people to take the fall for their crimes. Mostly poor folks, mostly minorities. We've identified 8 cases so far where someone went to prison for drugs that Raymond's officers planted. 8 lives destroyed," Thaddeus said quietly. 8 families torn apart. "Like yours," Preston acknowledged. "I know it doesn't make up for anything, but I've started a complete review of every conviction under Raymond's tenure. We're going to set things right." As Preston left, Thaddeus stood at the window, watching Millfield prepare for evening. Lights came on in homes and businesses. People headed home from work. Normal life continuing, even as the town's darkest secrets were finally exposed. "What now?" Marcus asked, joining him at the window. "I don't know." Thaddeus turned to his son. "I'm still figuring out how to live in this world. 30 years is a long time to be away. You could come to Chicago, meet your granddaughters, stay with us for a while." Thaddeus studied his son's face, the man Darlene had raised alone, the boy who had grown up without a father. Despite everything, Marcus had turned out well, strong, principled, kind. Darlene would have been proud. "I'd like that," Thaddeus said. "I'd like that very much." Later that evening, before leaving Millfield for what he hoped was the last time, Thaddeus visited the cemetery. Darlene's grave was well maintained, with fresh flowers someone had placed recently. Luella, probably. "It's over," he said softly, to the headstone. "You were right all along." The truth finally came out. As twilight deepened around him, Thaddeus stood in silent communion with the wife who had never stopped believing in him, never stopped fighting for him. He thought of all they had lost, the years they should have had together, the life they had planned. But he also thought of what remained, his son, his granddaughters, the future that still lay ahead, however shortened. Raymond Holloway had taken 30 years of his life. Thaddeus was determined that he wouldn't take a single day more. Abitiwar, Dananhiu, turned to leave. His phone rang. "Imani." "They've just finished the DNA test," she said without preamble. "The blood under Patricia's fingernails was Raymond's. They're charging him with first-degree murder." "It's over, Thaddeus. It's really over." Thaddeus looked up at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. The same stars he had glimpsed only in small patches through prison windows for 30 years. Now, the entire cosmos spread above him, vast and free. "No," he said quietly. "For me, it's just beginning. That's the end of story. Where are you listening from today?" If you enjoyed this story about justice finally served after 30 years, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more compelling narratives that shed light on important social issues. Share this video with friends and family to spread awareness about wrongful convictions and the importance of standing up for truth. Your support helps us continue creating content that entertains while fostering empathy and understanding. Thank you for listening.